start first and foremost with the cat-cow. So come on over and find your mat if you have one. We're doing our 10 or so cat-cows. When you get to your 10th rep, plus or minus a few, feeling nice. Do alternating bird dogs. So you're going to extend the leg, maybe the arm. Feet. For 10. Okay, we're going to stay in that tabletop position since we're already halfway there anyway. And we're going to either get some thoracic rotations, which I'll show you in a second. That's upper back, or threading the needle, which is just a bigger version of this. So I'm going to go ahead and angle the camera up for a second. So thoracic rotations are just really an upper back opener where we put our hands behind our head. We just kind of look over the shoulder. And then you can kind of rotate as much as you want down. That's kind of our bent elbow version. You can go full kind of thread the needle where we pick the hand up, straighten the arm, right? And rotate as much as you want. And then bring my hand through this gap between my knee and my wrist. And you kind of rotate. That's a little more final rotation. There's no wrong answer to either of these. It's more of a matter of taste. Do 3 to 5 reps per side. Okay. And of course, we'll switch sides, taking your time with these. So either bend the elbow or straighten the arm. You can get that rotation as much as you're comfortable. Did you have a horrifically long ride on Sunday where you were being blown around like a leaf in the wind?
No.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you weren't outside. Well,
I mean, it was windy on the bridge, but it's always windy on the bridge.
Sunday was, I rode my bike on Saturday and that was a little gusty, but you know, it's fine. Sunday, at least on our end of town, was pretty gusty. I'm glad you didn't have that. I know that a lot of people who are training for Ironman California are getting experienced that. They're like, is this an omen? And I was like, I hope not.
I mean, it's the Sacramento Valley, so the chance of wind is high.
It's going to be something. Last year was rain. Well, there was that. But yeah, it's always something with Ironman, but hopefully it's a manageable something. That's fingers crossed. Let's do our 90-90. So that's where our feet are about shoulder width, give or take, and drop legs off to one side. Let that opposite come off the ground. Then. And again, you can lean back to kind of alleviate you can alleviate the stretch or increase the stretch by leaning forward. And when transitioning, you can be as vertical as you want to be, keeping that back flat. Again, about roughly 10. So if you do a few more or a few less, that's okay. We're just kind of getting a sense of how the hips are feeling, which mine are not feeling great, if I'm being honest. I inverted my workouts and squatted yesterday instead of biking, and it's showing. So it's okay. It's all right, though. Okay. Let's do this. Let's start with, we'll start coming to a standing position. And we're gonna just do an overall, we've done these before. I call these moonies, guys. I'm gonna step back for a second so you can see me here. So I'm gonna have my feet about squat width. Okay, so it's about shoulder, hip width, depending on the person. My hands are above my head. I know you can't see them, but they're above my head. We're gonna squat down to whatever squat you currently have, keeping your toes and heels down. Your fingertips or palms towards or on the floor. Gently raise your hips. Squat back down. Hands back over your head. Standing back up. That's 1 rep. We're going to do 4 more. Not for speed. This is just a standing or loaded version of your hamstrings, hips, shoulders, back, all that. So it should be painful. Stiff is fine. If you can't touch your toes, you can touch your shins like you would in yoga, having a higher contact point. Whenever you're squatting, your hands are above your head, even if they're forward. That's okay. Might have lost count, but I think I did 5. Okay, so let's talk about our first piece. In fact, it could be kind of used as a warm-up, potentially. So we have good mornings. Good mornings are often, weight is going to be an option here, although we did front load them a couple weeks ago. And essentially, they're a hinge motion. It might be a hamstring and low back exercise. So for anyone with low back sensitivity, limit your range of motion going backwards. Traditionally, you're going to see this with a PVC pipe or a barbell or hands behind the head. So you might see it kind of in this. So hands behind the head, right? Kind of here to here. So very kind of like this part of the body. You can just do that if that feels like enough. That might feel like a nice stretch. If you want to add a little bit of weight, right? I have a kettlebell here. Dumbbells work fine. You're just gonna keep it close to your chest. So I find the kettlebell the easiest in that I like to hold the base of the kettlebell, the bottom, at my chest. So it sounds like a funny thing, but I'm gonna hold this here. So I feel like I'm just supporting. Now, if you have a different way to do it, that's fine, but I like to hold on my sternum. Dumbbells, a little more awkward, but doable. You can just kind of hold them, near your chest when you do this. But ultimately, front loaded just means it's in the front. So I'm going to put this weight on my sternum, just holding it, because I'm bracing against it. I'm unlocking my knees, setting my hips back, breathing in, keeping my chest up. Exhale, squeeze my butt, stand. So I'm loading. I feel a little more ab work because of the weight in the front of my body, as well as my hamstrings, my butt, and sometimes a little low back. Right. As long as it's all working together, we're fine. Having you do 8 reps. Now, again, the front loading is optional. So once the hips kind of stop, I want you to stop with that. Yeah. Doing 8 of these. And we're going to do 4 rounds of this. So we're kind of starting round 1 now because we're mixing instruction and movement together. Okay, so the next movement is 8 reps, either total. So that's if you're using 1 kettlebell and 2 feet. And I'll explain that in a second. Or single leg version, which is per side. So I have 2 examples of kettlebells here. I have 35, my right hand, 18, my left. So they're drastically bigger in size. It's not big enough, but for example, if I'm doing it with a heavier bell, that's this one, I'm going to go ahead and keep both feet on the ground, potentially. So if I can go heavier than this, but I'm still going to deadlift. Suitcase means it's off to my side. Okay. So it's still 8 per side. From here, I'm going to reach down like I'm deadlifting. So my hips are still going back like my deadlift. but my weight's only on one side. So often I'll do is stick my opposite hand out to balance. You don't have to. I'm gonna have a lot more pressure going through this side of my body. I'm still bracing with the left side. I'm gonna go ahead and, right? So it's an unevenly loaded deadlift. So my right side's working harder. That's okay. My left side is still working. Watch your toes. That's 8 reps on one side, and then of course we'll switch and do 8 reps on the other. Okay. Option 2, the weights are lighter, and or you want to take this down a notch. We can either go, right? Suitcase deadlift is going to be typically same size loading leg, foot is down or up, and from the side, it's going to be here now. So we're kind of taking the complexity up, the weight down. I might not touch the ground depending on my kettlebell size. Okay. Or I can fully lift the leg, which I'm not so good at, but that's okay. All right. So either option's fine. We're doing 8 reps per arm. Okay. Per grip, if you will. So less complicated and potentially heavier is 2 feet. The weight's off to one side. The weight's a little lighter. Yeah. So we're biasing the standing leg and the standing arm. Or the arm on the standing leg. So you stick your opposite hand out, or it's like a counterbalance. Go. And that back foot can lift or not, Joe, so it's kind of up to you in terms of balance, weight, how you're feeling today. But keeping both hip bones facing square to whatever wall you're facing. We're trying not to rotate.
All right.
Beautiful. That's round 1. You're just gonna do 3 more at your own pace. The front loaded good mornings and the single leg, in your case, single leg suitcase deadlifts. Yeah. With anything like good morning or a hinge exercise, obviously it's a bit of common sense. You seem fine, but if you have back sensitivities, just be mindful of those. Okay. I will say for anyone with a smaller kettlebell, you seem fine with that, Joseph. It's a little bigger, but if you want to touch the ground, you can always like touch a stack of books or like bring the ground to the kettlebell on this exercise. That might be a nice option instead of hovering, but both are.
Were your rounds all together?
4.
4.
I will say we did 3 last week. Or sorry, not last week. Excuse me. Last 2 weeks ago, I think. So if this is your first time doing it, 3 is fine, right? Sometimes getting used to the load, overall load, might be useful. So it's okay to stop at 3. We have plenty of other stuff to do. Feel good, feel free to do 4. For anyone watching this later and you've already done it with the 3 rounds and that felt okay, go ahead and add a 4th. A lot of times with weightlifting, the same way it is with endurance training, sometimes it's a lot of the similar workouts, but duration increases, intervals increase, or intensity goes up. So the principles all remain the same. We're just using different mechanisms. So in this case, we did this a couple weeks ago, but I'm adding rounds or adding reps depending on the movement and the section. Here. Yes. Nice work. I can't see your bottom foot, Joseph, but if you're having trouble lifting that left leg, see if the foot is turning out, right? Or the knee is dropping in. So then you can drop the toe down. So basically instead of, I'm guessing, right? Instead of this happening, whoop, right? This kind of turning out on you, turn that back foot or hip in. It's going to feel like an opposite rotation. So instead of external rotation, that might feel slightly more balanced potentially.
It's because I have arch issues on my right foot.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
So not super balanced.
I have the same thing on my left. My left foot is my the
problem child.
Weaker. It's a stiffer ankle for me actually, but and then I have tight right calves. It's always a fun combination. So they're both kind of interesting. You can always try deficit calf raises for arch practice. I'm sure you already have some exercises, but
I'll take whatever you can give me then.
yeah, we'll talk about it at the end. It's very simple to do, and you just need to elevate your foot on something very little. Okay, and it shouldn't impact your heavily impact your training, so you can kind of squeeze into your training or like into stuff sessions. I'm sure you already know by now, but it's a kind of a glute heavy workout. So you're gonna feel this in the back half of your body pretty heavily.
All right, that's 4 rounds.
So the good news is kind of the remainder of this is going to be a little more mix and match. So it's going to be less deadlift specific, sort of hingy, and more just a little upper body, a little more balance work. And then we're going to kind of take the pressure off lower body. Only thing we have lower body is goblet squats, which you have done, I think, more than once, but essentially where you carry, just go order of operations. Remind me, you have only kettlebells, correct? Not dumbbells?
I have both.
Both, great. So I'll demonstrate both just in case we have people with different stuff. We have in order of operation, we have starting with Renegade rows. This is 6 to 8 per side. So that would mean a total of, 6 to 8 per side, excuse me. That's a total of, am I doing math wrong here? Well, let me think about this. I'll demonstrate it and explain. So a Renegade row, in this case, I do this with a push-up. If doing this with a push-up is too much, then don't. Okay. You just remove the push-up out of the equation. And essentially, I'll start from the most difficult version and work my way down. So we're going to do this with a push-up. And I have both of these dumbbells, in this case, underneath my shoulders. These are 10 pounds. That's plenty here. I think it is. I'm in my plank shape, right? I'm gonna do my push-up, right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and row with my left arm, keeping my left hip down. So I'm avoiding a big shift to the left hip. If I can, help it, right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and do my opposite side, right? That's 1, repeat. There's 6 total, 68 total. So that's 1, this will be 2. Okay. So the idea being that as we pull up and row with this arm, we're avoiding a big rotation of this hip. We're trying to keep that hip as square to the ground as possible. Harder than it sounds, and you don't need anything super big for this. Kettlebells are a bit tricky here unless you have very good wrist stability and the same size kettlebell. So it's okay if it ends up being something like, right, a push up in a row. That's a dumbbell, but its principle applies. It's okay if it ends up being a push up, and then you grab your weight, row. Right. So it's okay if that's the case. You can also just, in this case, one weight. Go ahead and do 6 on one side. Sorry, 3 to 4 on one side, 3 to 4 reps on the other. So it's a total of 6 to 8. Right. The weights are too much. That might be out of the not working for you. We can go ahead and still do our push up. If you want to add the push up in, that's a bonus, but still an option. Right? Push up, and then we can tap the shoulder. So either opposite, right, or same. But instead of rowing, we're just picking it up the ground. Right. And last but not least, of course, you just do shoulder taps. But we're in the plank shape. And you're just tapping shoulder. Same thing though, we don't want that hip to rotate a ton. So we're just trying to add some complexity. So that's for the first movement. Second movement is, and I say it's any of those things. I started the hardest and worked my way down. We have, I called it, so officially 6 per side, ipsilateral, that means same-sided, balance, bicep curl, and overhead press. So essentially, it's a bicep curl and overhead press. You're just lifting one leg. Okay, so from the bottom up, I'm doing this, right? So I'm standing on one foot. That's all, right? That's all that means. I'm gonna have my weight in either hand. I'm gonna go opposite. Okay, so I'm gonna go left leg, right hand. And your bicep curl can be palm facing you, right? This might be more traditional. You can go hammer curl. That's your cup of tea. That's fine. That's cool with me. Either way. So either way, I'm gonna stand on one leg. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna stand on one leg. I'm gonna go ahead and curl. Whoop, speaking of balance. And then go ahead and press. Press. And back down. Bicep curl. Sorry, excuse me. This way. So standing leg, standing arm. Press. We're just going to do this for 5 reps. If you fall over, go wobbly, it's okay. So it's mostly a balance exercise. And of course, our goblet squats, we've done these a bajillion times, but on the off chance you don't know, weights in the chest, squatting, standing. We change air squats very comfortably. We're doing a total of 3 times through. The Renegade rows are a total of 6 to 8 reps. So 1 rep total with full movement is push up 2 rows. Okay. Like I said, if you're doing a single object, you can push up, row on one side only for 3 reps, 3 to 4 reps, and then switch arms. You end up doing the same amount of push-ups, but the rows are slightly shortened. That's a lot of information. Any questions?
So it's 6 to 8 Renegade rows, and then 5 bicep curl overhead press per side, and then how many goblet squats? 8?
I could 10.
10.
I can remind you of that too. So if
3
you
times through.
reminder, that's totally fine to ask.
Well, there's only me, so.
I mean, I work with classes of 15 where they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So this is, I wouldn't say it's easy. but it's not 15 adults not paying attention, so. Good. Before you pull that arm up, try and kind of preload that hip down. So you're like overcorrecting a little. So rotate your hip downwards before you pull a little. Yeah, there you go. Doesn't need a lot, just a slight overcorrection. There will be some movement, but the goal is to minimize that movement. Good. Excellent. So it's the standing, so yeah, there you go. I was gonna say, you can't absolutely use a kettlebell here. I not use a dumbbell for everything. You're more than welcome to use a kettlebell for this piece as well. Yeah. And if you have the option, it's not always the case, but if you do, in fact, you're doing this in a gym or you have a very well-stocked home gym, it is okay if you find yourself adding weight on specific movements. So you might potentially add weight to the renegade row. You can always add weight to this same-sided bicep curl and overhead press. And you can, of course, always add weight to the goblet squat, but you don't have to add weight to everything. You can add weight to things that feel appropriately challenging. But if you don't have the option, go ahead and just stick to what you have. Nice. After your set of goblet squats, you've completed one round or set. You're going to do a total of 3. And I'll say this just in case for anyone who's here, you can rest as needed between movements or between rounds. Nice job. Nice job. Probably sounds obvious thing to say, but make sure you're breathing on those. A lot of times that might not always be the case. Good. Find your balance. Nice work. And for anyone who needs to hear it, you can always put a foot down if you like you're gonna fall over. And squats. Good. Final time through. You should have that same sided bicep curl and press. I will say, frankly, staying on one leg for 20 seconds might be enough today as well, depending on, you know, where anyone else is at. But essentially, we're staying on one foot. The bicep curl and overhead press is a big bonus. Excellent. You're gonna have extended rest, well-deserved rest. So actually, what I will say is I really liked on the bicep curl and press. Like I said, the bicep curl and press is really, we're just adding both complexity, but also just on top of balancing, you're doing other stuff, right? So we're just building hopefully new neuromuscular pathways. So like just brain body connection stuff. But I'm glad there was some wobbling. That's not a bad thing. That leg was kind of kicking out when it needed to find some balance. For our final part, this is one of those where we have the time, but if you don't, it's okay to stop here. This is really just a big ab piece. So I'll demonstrate. We've done a side plank rotation before, so I'll show you what we've done in the past, and then potentially adding weight, maybe, right? Depending on what you have available, and or what feels appropriate for you. So our two movements, I'll just demonstrate one side. For this first one is 6 to 8 reps of a side plank rotation. If you read the description, it'll say weight optional. So I'm going to go without weight first. A side plank, first and foremost, right, is the basic shape that we're going to start with. You can start with your feet together, right? So full side plank. I want my elbow, in this case, shoulder and shoulder to stay on top of it. So no rotation here yet to start with. My hand, which you can't see, is above my left shoulder, which is top of my right shoulder, which is top of my right elbow. Okay. This side plank is too much. You can drop the bottom knee. That's fine. Do the same thing, right? So from my left foot all the way up makes one line. There's no bending in this. My butt is squeezed. So the rotation itself, my hand is above my head. I'm going to thread or reach through this gap. So it's not quite the thread the needle. And yes, there's rotation. But my rotation doesn't come at the cost of rotating my hip. Okay, so I'm not rotating the hip. The hip is staying forward. So really we're feeling this is right in this lateral piece here. So I'm going to be in my modified side plank because I want to. I'm going to rotate and reach through. I feel it right into that insertion of my armpit, then come back. So I'm barely reaching that crease. My body. I'm not rotating at the cost of my hip. I have a couple options. No, but silly. I have a can of sparkling water. I have a 10-pound weight. Same things apply. So you can grab something, do the same thing. So I'm going to rotate and reach. Right. So we're adding a little bit of weight as I do this. Right. Or something slightly heavier, 10 pounds, a little more control involved. Right. And I might not rotate as much. So this is my side plank rotation with a full side plank or a modified side plank. You're doing 6 to 8 per side. Movement 2, body saw. That's essentially where we're in a forearm plank. And we're just gonna oscillate forward and back. So heavy on the elbows, heavy on the toes, heavy on the elbows, heavy on the toes. So in this case, I'm doing on my elbows, so you can do on your hands too. When in my forearm plank, my hands are separated. I'm holding my plank shape first, my butt squeezed. I'm going to just go forward and back, forward and back. Really simple, but we're doing 30 seconds worth. Any questions?
How many rounds?
We're gonna potentially 3 rounds. But like it's optional. So this is one where you can be like, I'm done, thanks. I know that's not typically your approach, but it is okay for that to be the case. So we're gonna start on the side plank rotations.
Yeah.
You don't have to have these unless you want to. Like that said, that's purely optional. But let's start with, okay, if the iPad doesn't quite angle correctly. Let's do 6 to 8 reps per side. So you're gonna, yep. And yeah, that's it. And hopefully you're gonna feel like right in that armpit / lat insertion. So. Good. This is feeling like an 8 out of 10 hard, right? You can always reduce the reps to 6 or even less. It's okay, yeah, flip over for that. It's okay. Excellent. So for the body saws, you can rest, of course, because we just did a ton of stuff. I have a running clock here, so when you start, I'll just start the clock. But if you are
How long? 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
30.
But I also have a clock here, so I'll let once you start, I'll just start counting.
I'll tell you when I start. All right, go.
Okay. Nice job. That's 10. You have 10 more seconds. 2, 1, and rest. Good. Or pause or whatever you want to do.
Was there a prescribed rest?
Not explicitly, but I would say, with ab stuff, as long as you feel you can maintain that integrity. So if you're doing side planks and the hips dipping, and you can rest a little longer. But if you're like, I feel pretty good, or my core is pretty strong, or I don't need the rest, you could pretty much just roll into round 2. I think it depends on your overall fatigue, essentially.
Let's test.
Yeah, you can always test this theory, and you can always just stop. I tend not to prescribe rest unless the weights we're lifting or the intensity of the session is getting progressively harder. So more like in a gym setting, where I'm like, hey, we're doing all doubles or triples on a deadlift. I prescribe rest, versus I would say more complex things, your body will typically self-regulate. Maybe that's not the case for triathletes, though. You can tell me if that's true or not. I'll just, as you start oscillating, I'll catch you. Don't worry about it. There you go. Nice work. You have 10 more seconds. 2, 1, rest. Good.
All right. Let's see if I can round it out.
Final set. And we'll still have a good 10 minutes to just downregulate a little bit. We could talk about that arch support, or say, I don't know, accessory work that you can kind of incorporate into stuff. I will say with the side plank rotations, you can always do also grab like a can of beans. Sometimes just grabbing something is enough to activate that system, right? So you don't necessarily need a dumbbell. There you go. The final set of body saws. Nice work. Less than 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Rest indefinitely. Not forever, given that you're training for Ironman California, but
Dead.
you'll get some rest.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Cool. How'd that feel?
Shoulders are tired.
Yeah.
To be expected.
Yeah, I would expect that too. By the time you get to part C, even if you've taken part A and B pretty lightly, all three together, can be a pretty hefty load, depending on how you approach the first two parts. In terms of, you mentioned instability in your arch. Is that just a lack of, has this is something you just recognize for yourself, or has like a PT been like, hey, your arches are a problem?
Been going on since last October.
Okay. What changed since last October? Or it took maybe that
I went to Asia a year ago, took 3 weeks off, and then took an additional week after vacation, and then went straight to a track workout and exploded my arch. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I basically wasn't walking for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
After that, anywho, didn't run until basically February of this year.
Mhm.
It's been on and off, but now I can actually run. It's just, for example, there's this on it for the last week, KT tape.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I can definitely tell it supports, it helps.
Okay.
All of my shoes have arch supports
Okay.
to some degree.
Okay. Obviously KT tape would suggest potentially, not always, because you could buy it, but was this diagnosed, was this treated by a PT?
I went to my primary care person, and then I went to an orthopedist.
Yeah.
And he effectively said my arch, the primary muscle that supports my arch, shit the bed. And so the secondary muscle is now doing a lot, if not all of the work. So basically, don't do it if it hurts, which is what I've been doing.
Okay.
And then take it easy as I go.
Okay. It's one of those things where what I'll do is I'll say this much. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, first and foremost. Secondly, the reason for this exercise for me personally was my foot collapses, not because my arch isn't working, but because my calf and my ankle are stiff. So the systems above that system are a little stiff. So it's approached from like it's approached from a stretch reflex idea, but it's also a stability piece. So this also tries to be like a hold, like an isometric hold, instead of like a raise up and down. And ultimately, the goal here is just to create some stability in the foot, right? So in this case, the ball of the foot's going to be on something potentially elevated, right? And this can be a plate or a cookbook, or whatever you want. Okay, as long as it's stable. And essentially, when your foot's coming down, okay, this is my better foot. I have a pretty high arch, but that's neither here nor there. As my foot comes down, I want this arch to remain active. So from the front, you should see this knee and ankle relationship remain the same, right? As opposed to this kind of collapse inwards. It's pretty subtle, but seeing this sort of internal collapse, right? So if I'm elevating my foot head on, right? And I come down, this is about where I want to stop before this starts to come in. This sort of whole ankle joint starts to come in on me, right? It's not going to be big, but it's going to, I can feel all that shift to the inside of my leg. So this might just be holding potentially, like you can hold that position. So for example, so I can get this down on the floor. See if this is helpful. More of a floor view. So essentially, when I'm doing this, so I'd be against the wall usually. As I come down, this arch stays active. This is active for me. I still have contact to my feet. I might touch the ground with my heel, right? If I'm against a wall, I'm going to go up with 2 feet and down with 1. So I don't have a wall at the moment, but I'd be up with a calf raise up and then let myself come down. I personally feel a stretch here. You might start to feel activation here. The stretch might not be necessary for you, Joseph, in that it's probably pretty stretched out. So maybe it's just an isometric hold. So maybe it's like, can I ball the foot and find some stability head on? So this knee and ankle relationship remains integral. If I let that go, see how it kind of comes in? We want to avoid this collapse of the ankle. So this might, this might be fully inappropriate. It's just feeling like a little bit too much. If that is in fact the case, but I would say typically, and I'll do my best here, what would happen is I'm going to go without the weight or the deficit for the sake of this demonstration. What I would do is this: I would go up with 1 foot or up with 2 feet, and then, oops, okay, balance. Up with 1 foot. I usually have a wall with me here, and then down with 1. Up with 2, down with 1, right? But of course, usually I have a wall with me to push into. And that allows, so essentially we're extending the foot by pushing up and flexing the foot, right? Hold on, wait. Extension, flexion, yeah. Extending, and as the heel comes down, right? Now, if that feels like it's causing pain, discomfort, you don't like it, doesn't make sense, that's totally fine. But we're really focusing on that relationship of ball of the foot connected to that heel, right? And it's essentially what you're doing in running, right? It's not always a toe strike, but it's hopefully not a heel strike, unless that's changed in the last couple of years. So supporting that foot through there. And I was prescribed, 3 sets of 10 per side. But if that's feeling like it's over fatiguing, that foot, the side that you KT taped, obviously you can adjust. And of course, you can potentially increase difficulty by increasing range of motion by adding height. So increasing the height that you're putting your foot on. Like I said, I did it for a different reason. So this might be something that is redundant for you. But it also might be helpful. Take it or leave it.
I'll add it to the repertoire.
Try it. And if, like I said, if it's causing some, but I would say if anything, you can probably, I would say add it in before or after running, see if you have a preference. Or maybe just on not, or use it on non-running days, right?
Yeah.
So where it's more just like practice when you're not on your feet as much. Feel free to ditch it if it's starting to feel inappropriate though.
No, I could see it affecting my arch, not in a bad way, just like I'm working it.
Yeah, it should be relatively gentle. That's the goal, right? And it gives you a chance to create stability and hopefully muscular endurance. That's my hope anyway. Nice work today.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. I hope you have a good rest of your week and good luck with your training.
Thank you.
All right, Joseph, take care of yourself.
Alrighty. Have a good one. See ya.